Welcome to Comic Chop News. This is Dan, and today we're going to talk about Halloween 2018. This is going to be a spoiler review, so if you have not seen the movie yet, I advise you to move on because shit will get spoiled. So, to talk about this movie, I can't not talk about the score. John Carpenter and Cody Carpenter did a great job setting the atmosphere, the mood, the vibe that haven't really had the last couple of movies. And also included in the things I need to talk about and I feel are important are James Jude Courtney as the Shape. He did the glide of Nick Castle. He also incorporated the Dick Warlock Terminator walk. And you mix in the brutality of Rob Zombie's Halloween, which wasn't exactly what I love, but he did such a good job blending it. And anything I have negative to say about the movie, which it isn't a whole lot, it's more like quibbles, James Jude Courtney is not one of them. And probably will not be, and if there is another one, I hope to hell he's back. So, to start at the top, we end up with what we saw in the trailers all the time, at the asylum. So, Dana and Aaron are there, and they are podcasters doing a serial type criminology podcast, where they're investigating the babysitter murders, aka the Myers murders. So, when we start there, we end up meeting Dr. Sartain. Faux Loomis, the plot device. He is one of Loomis's students who ended up taking over as Myers' caretaker. He is kind of a little bit creepy, and he sets up some stuff later on, which not my favorite part of the movie. I'll get on that later. So he lets Aaron and Dana go out there to the yard where Myers is at, chained up. Aaron asks if he can go near him. Sartain says yes, but don't cross the yellow line. Aaron gets as close to the yellow line as humanly possible without crossing it, and then decides to pull out the mask that for some reason his attorney general friend just happened to give him. Which, kind of fascinating that they would let that happen, but it's a movie, so quibbles. Anyway, he keeps trying to get Michael to react to him holding the mask. As he's holding it out, the inmates around him start kind of going a little nutty, and as that's happening, the dogs start barking, and Aaron just keeps saying, talk to me, say something, and the way the inmates are reacting is a throwback to the Halloween novelization from 1978 by Curtis Richards, in that he remarks that all the inmates react to Myers' presence, and in that book, when Myers escapes, all the inmates are walking around that Loomis finds saying the evil is gone, which then Loomis takes to the nurse and says the evil is gone. So from there, the podcasters end up moving on to where Laurie's at to interview her. They end up having to pay her $3,000. She pretty much lives in a country fortress. So as they're doing that, Aaron is kind of a dick and starts mentioning about her broken marriages and the way her daughter Karen was taken away. So that ends the interview pretty fast. She gets her $3,000. After that, we click on to where Karen, the estranged daughter, her husband Ray, and the granddaughter Allison are. Allison is asking her grandmother, or he's asking her mother about if she talked to grandmother about going to her honor society induction. Karen kind of lies to her, or straight to her face. Allison knows that she's lying, but doesn't really confront it. We meet Ray, the dad, who is kind of the dad joke goofball, trying to be cool dad. There wasn't really enough of him to really care one way or another. More on that later. So from there, we end up meeting Allison's friends, Vicky and Dave. Dave is the stoner. Vicky is kind of, I'd say, a cross between PJ Souls and Annie from the original. Better character than some of the others introduced. We also meet at the school Cameron, who is Lonnie's son. Lonnie, who was scared off from the Myers house by Loomis, saying, "Lonnie, get your ass away from there!" After that, she is in class, and Allison happens to look out the window, and there is grandmother Laurie sitting there. So we have a nice homage to the first one where Michael was sitting out the window. She offers to give her $3,000 to use for anything. After that, we end up seeing Michael getting boarded onto a bus. They're getting ready to do the transfer. And Lori is sitting there outside of the gates waiting for him to go out. She's chugging alcohol out in the car. She ends up not being able to do it. Also, Sartain gets on the bus. More on that later. So after that happens, Lori ends up showing up at the dinner, kind of broken. And she first starts out by, congratulating Allison for getting the Honor Society and how she was in Honor Society. And she starts cracking and starts chugging wine, and Karen and Ray start getting into it with her, makes an uncomfortable scene with the boyfriend there. And Lori just starts crying and saying what happened and just walks out. And you kind of feel bad for her, especially with the way Karen and the husband react. But Allison was the one shining show of humanity walking out and trying to comfort her. And you get the empathy from her that she actually cares about her grandmother, unlike some of the other people. After that, we cut to this child, Lumpy, and his dad. Lumpy has the aspirations of being a dancer and says that it's calling to his soul. The dad just wants to go hunting. They almost hit a flock of inmates walking around their white garments out in the street. We've seen this before at Smith's Grove, but just out in the yard. From there, the dad goes out, disappears. Lumpy's calling the cops, decides to go out and look for his dad. As he's going there, there's a cop there just torn apart and screams for him to run. Lumpy's got a shotgun, walks to the bus, and we get the jump scare of Sartain, and he shoots Sartain. More on that later. Lumpy gets freaked out, runs to the car. As he gets in the car, Myers does something we hadn't seen before. Myers kills a child. Preteen, whatever it is, but he did have a gun. And as that's happening, we cut over to Dana and Aaron. They're going over the Loomis files and listening to a tape of Loomis saying the evil must die, kill him, and the tape starts warbling. And the next morning, before that, Hawkins gets called there, played by Will Patton. Will Patton gets out there and finds Sartain, finds out what happened, calls in the other cops, and he cut to the Sartain at the hospital with Hawkins, where the sheriff, who looks like Creighton Duke from Jason Goes to Hell, shows up, and they talk about it, and he's dismissive and saying, "Oh, should we cancel Halloween? Ha ha ha." Usual sheriff bullshit from a movie. Lori finds out, starts arming herself to the T, breaks into over at Karen's house. They kick her out of the house. And then we go further down where Michael is at the graveyard as Aaron and Dana are looking at Judith's gravestone. And I'd imagine follows them, because now we start to the gas station scene, which we've all seen in the trailers. What they didn't show in the trailers is Aaron's pumping gas, Dana's going to look for the bathroom, and out of the corner of your eye you can see Michael walking behind following a mechanic. So as Dana goes in the bathroom, these feet come in, you see the boots, and what looks to be coveralls. Aaron goes in to pay, can't get the guy behind the register to help him, can't find him. So he goes into the garage, finds a man disrobed dead on the floor. Michael at this point is in there terrorizing Dana. He's slamming the door, shaking it, and drops bloody teeth in there. And she tries to escape, starts dragging her. As she's dragging her out, Aaron comes in, you see the door open, and he smacks Michael in the face with a crowbar. As you imagine, didn't work out so well. He started using Aaron's face as a battering ram to get into the stall, and just caves his face in. We don't know if Aaron's dead. He kind of gurgles and closes his eyes. Michael ends up grabbing Dana by the neck and I'd imagine snapping it. Not too clear on it, you just see her feet stop moving. And then we have Will Patton again as Hawkins, and Creighton Duke show up again, and he says that they need to get out on Michael, he's loose. They talk about it some more, and Lori's there. Also, Sartain came with Creighton Duke, and Lori is introduced to New Loomis, and they bring up the fact that Will Patton Hawkins had stopped Loomis from killing Michael. This is a thing that I would have rather seen at the beginning of the movie and kind of fill in the holes of exactly how Michael got caught, and they don't fill it in. They don't even tell or show. You just kind of left with, this happened, so be it. And so we go a little bit further, and Michael is now out and about. He got his mask back out of the trunk, and he's going door to door. And there's some great hat tips to part 2. One of the first houses he goes into, it's kind of redoing the scene of Mrs. Elrod, where Mrs. Elrod never got killed, but Michael comes in, smacks her in the head with the hammer, and then ends up taking the knife. As he's walking through the house, there's a baby crying. He kind of stops and looks, keeps walking, which kind of almost thought he was going to kill the kid. As he walks out, he sees a couple arguing at their car. Decided to pass them up, probably thought they were too much of a pain in the ass, and goes into another house with another hat tip to part 2, where in part 2, the first kill of it was Alice, and she was talking to her friend Sally on the phone. I imagine this is another Alice because she was talking to someone named Sally, and he breaks in the house, kills her. There's other hat tips to part 2 with the boombox kid, who he runs into going to the hospital in part 2. All kinds of little Easter eggs all over the place. So as this is going on, we end up fast forwarding to the dance that Allison and Cameron are at. Cameron is getting drunk. Friend Oscar is there. Basically, this whole thing is a plot device for Cameron to get mad at her and fight so that he could throw her cell phone into fondue or cheese dip or whatever the hell it was, just so she wouldn't have a phone for the rest of the time. So from there we move on to Vicky babysitting Julian. Some people don't like this scene because there's humor. Julian is kind of like Reckless Reggie, except funnier, from Jason Part 5. And there's a nice back and forth. I think it's cute. It's good to develop the fact that Vicky kind of isn't just there as Allison's friend. Dave comes over, and as that's going on, Oscar and Allison leave the party, the dance, and Oscar is trying to kind of hook up with her, and she friend zones him pretty quick, gives him the finger. As this is happening, Michael is having a little hide and seek over at Vicky's babysitting house. Dave has gone over there. They're kind of dry humping, and then the little kid said he saw somebody up in his room. So Vicky goes up there, and Michael proceeds to just kill the shit out of her. And then Dave goes over there. You never see what happens to Dave. Julian got away, but Dave was killed off screen. We find his body later on. Hawkins goes over there, and Arts and Crafts Michael strikes again, and he's got Vicky in a chair with the ghost sheet over her, and Dave is stuck to a wall. Michael is walking around, and Jamie Lee Curtis, Laurie, is there, and so is Hawkins, and they're kind of playing cat and mouse with Michael. They get a pretty good shot on him. After that happens, Michael ends up over in the Elrod yard, where he ends up killing Oscar. The Oscar death is pretty awesome. Not only does he slash him in the back, he hangs him on the fence. And then we get this scene of pure terror because Allison goes back to see what's going on, and then she sees Oscar hanging there. And then comes the boogeyman that she's been hearing about since she was a kid. So she freaks out and starts running door to door, banging on doors. Unlike the other one, someone actually came out to help her. Michael moves on. As this is going on, Laurie shows up over at Karen's trying to get Allison and get all of them to her house and safe. The Allison isn't there. They end up moving on without them, and they sent a cop over to stay at that house, and Hawkins shows up with Sartain over to the house where Allison's at and pick her up. After this, one of the shittiest things in the movie happens, and it bugs me to no end. So, again, another hat tip to part 2, an homage if you must. Hawkins, Allison, and Sartain see Michael on the road. They hit him with the car. Sartain runs out saying that he's state property, don't kill him. Checks the vitals, and Hawkins is saying, I'm going to blow his brains out, I'm going to blow his brains out. And Sartain says he's dead, then turns around with this pop-up scalpel and starts slashing the shit out of Hawkins, thus killing him. And then the inconceivable happens. He puts on Michael's mask, saying, oh, he always wanted to know how it felt, and drags him to the car. And then they start driving, and Allison says, if you let me go, I'll tell you what he said to me. So Sartain slams the brakes. He's like, Michael talked to you? Why did he talk to you? So it goes back and forth for a bit. And as he's saying that, he goes, did he talk about Judith? And as he says, did he talk about Judith? Then it happens, and Michael's mask is gone as Allison looks over. And Michael comes through the back seat into the front, smashing Sartain, his head through the window, and getting him out of the car. Allison gets out and starts running. And Michael doesn't seem to be too bothered by that. And after that happens, one of the greatest scenes in the movie happens for a character I hate, and Michael just curb stomps the head right into the ground, just blows it up like a pumpkin. And the two goofy cops they introduce come over, and just, they needed to die. There was no point of it. Plus one of their heads gets turned into a pumpkin later on, which also was interesting. So Laurie is there with Karen and Ray. Ray is being Ray. Karen's showing them the hidden basement. They're getting all armed and ready. Cops come back, the cop car. Ray walks out like an idiot and ends up getting choked out by Michael with the chain. No one seems to care when he dies. Just really odd. As this is happening, Allison's still running through the woods. Karen and Laurie go down into the basement. And, well, Karen does. Laurie ends up locking the door after Ray's dead, and then Michael ends up busting through the door, choking her out through the door, both arms busting out. And as this struggle's happening, it's very tense. He ends up getting his hand over the shotgun, and she blows off about 2 or 3 of his fingers, and he disappears. She runs down the basement, and from there, you hear him walking around upstairs, and she shoots through the floor. And then the usual Michael kind of clump. She goes up saying she's going to finish it. And while up there, she's following the blood around the house. There's different doors around the house, and she's hitting switches, making gates come down. So kind of limiting where he can go. As this is going on, she finds Ray's body. Michael stuffed him in the closet just like he did to PJ Souls. In part 1, they have another struggle where she inevitably is thrown out the balcony. And as he's sitting there looking, Allison happens to get into the house and starts screaming for mom, grandmother. So he turns around and looks, and Laurie does another Michael and is gone from the ground. I clapped. It was awesome. It was just kind of nice to see it happen to him. And as it's going, the struggle's happening again. Karen and Allison get downstairs, and Michael's just going crazy, trying to flip the covering countertop over. He finally gets it up, and Karen falls back into her training. She has her old shotgun, and she's sounding pathetic, saying, I can't do it, Mom. Mom, I need your help. I can't do this. So Michael finally takes the bait, and as he walks around, she goes, gotcha. Shoots him, and it was finally the first cool moment that Karen had the whole movie. And then Laurie, they do the face reveal, dimmer light behind, and she pops out with a knife saying, Happy Halloween, Michael, starts just carving into him. And finally they struggle, and he falls down the stairs. As this happens, Allison and Karen are running up the stairs to get out of there. Michael gets a hold of Karen's leg, and they're trying to just beat his arm off. And Allison grabs a butcher knife, and then just starts hacking at him. Got his hand, got his shoulder, he lets go, and they trigger these grates across the basement that kind of lock him in, and they say it was never a cage, it was a trap. And Laurie sets the gas going, and they just light the whole house on fire, and Michael the whole time staring at them. So as they're running out, Allison goes to the road to get somebody to help them, and they load up into the truck. You never see Michael again. You don't see him burning like Dick Warlock at the end of part 2, and the weird thing, there was a theory going around as they're in the truck, because Allison's in there with this butcher knife, along with Karen and Lori, and they're all bleeding. And there was a weird internet theory that they were dead and Allison killed them, which is just stupid. They focused on the knife because Lori, or Jamie Lee in real life, used to get annoyed because of the "why'd you drop the knife, why'd you drop the knife." So they focused in on the knife, and then it cuts to black. Credits. And then the credits go through, and then you hear the Michael breathing. Is it the end? I don't know. Hopefully, it made enough money, so we're going to see another one. How it works, I don't know. But when I first saw the movie, my expectations were sky high. It probably colored my viewing a lot more than it should have. So I kind of walked out a bit underwhelmed. The ending still bothers me. I'd like to see what the original ending was, hopefully on the Blu-ray. I know that didn't go over too well either. I just saw it again recently in the IMAX showing, and my expectations were a little lower. I knew it was coming, so I think I accepted a little bit more. Originally, my grade was probably about 7.5. Now I'm at an 8, 8.5. It's still not perfect, but it's not bad. I mean, it might grow on me more, but definitely James Jude Courtney, never a problem with him. Not one problem at all. And don't let my views paint how you see the movie. Everybody sees movies different. It's subjective. So just enjoy what you enjoy and love it if you want to. And that's it for me. Thank you. Good night and good luck.